right. In Italy, I live in UK for a year now, so I'm a little bit out of our Italian world, but there is a digital agenda, right? And there is here the person in charge for digital agenda. Maybe it's the right time that in Italy something happened. Francesco Caio, here it is. Welcome.
Good morning. That's my PowerPoint for Digital Agenda. What I'll try to do today is to give you a bit of a flavor of things that are related to the matters that are of interest to you, in the hope that we're going to have a bit of a debate, and more importantly than the debate, the build-up of a conviction that this could be a land that is good for investments and more importantly for returns. As we speak, Enrico Letta, our Prime Minister, is in New York promoting a more general cadre of bills that are exactly aimed at attracting foreign investment in this country. So what I'll try to do, I guess in about 10 minutes, and then hopefully a bit of interaction, is to cover three topics. There was Corrado Passera here a year ago. Where are we on the startup legislation? Two, what are kind of things that the way we're interpreting as part of the central government digital agenda? And thirdly, some thoughts that I've always had on the Italian university, the kind of talents that the system produces that might be hopefully of relevance to you. Let me start from where Corrado left it a year ago. There has been progress on legislation, there has been progress on the interest and the awareness that the community of new companies could bring to the equation of growth and employment. A lot of work to do still. We've had an opportunity when I was appointed back in June to have some more formal consultation processes with some of you. Probably some of people who attended that meeting are here today. My overall reading of the thing that is kind of gradually moving in the right direction. There are important points still to be finalized. First and foremost, the tax benefits that are now in the process of being eventually agreed with Brussels. And my colleagues at the Ministry of Industry tell me that they are pretty confident that comes the end of October, that part of the legislation will be in place. And as you know, it's an important one. I don't know how familiar you are, but there is a digital register of all companies that operate in Italy that is also having a section on startups. It's called startup.registroimprese, which is terrible for people who don't speak Italian, but it's registroimprese.it. And you could go there, and it's actually pretty cool because it's real time, and you can see all the companies that are registered under the section of startup. And last night, 1,148 companies. So you've got them all the stats there. You might want to have a look. I think just to close on the startup, my concern is not just for the investment. The primary point for me is the culture of the exit. In other words, how can Italian companies begin to think along the lines of integrating internal R&D with the acquisition of startups as a way of accelerating? So maybe there is something there to be thought in terms of facilitating this process, because in my view, that is where the attention really gets to the table of investors. Second point, very quickly on the, and we can go back on any of the points, just to conclude on the first one. I feel that there is now a part of the government that is fully focused on this thing. So I think that the government and the administration is moving in the right direction. It wasn't a fad. It's something that it remains to be an important item of the government action. And I feel relatively confident that the equation investment, technology, startup, growth is quite firmed up in the minds of politicians in this country. As I said, a lot of work to be done, but I think the direction is pointing in the right direction. On the digital agenda, the digital agenda, it's everything and the country, everything can be put into the digital agenda. The approach we've taken is to give a particular meaning that hopefully could also be relevant to this community digital agenda, which is a path more than a series of projects, a path towards a sustainable architecture of digital public administration. That is therefore not just a list of processes, but a shared view of what the public administration should be going towards in terms of digital processes rather than digital documents or databases. To highlight specifically objectives that can be translated into money for the government and the community at large. We have removed rather than added to the digital agenda. We have tried to do our best to focus on 3 deliverables that can be tracked and measured. There is a very well-established Italian habit of adding without concluding anything, and Jeff was trying to take away and focus on things to push them to the finishing line. The 3 projects are our National Register for Population, Digital Identity, which I am a great believer of, as a software logical architecture that is, in a way, technology agnostic, that can be pushed forwards in the long term and is not dependent on any specific implementation, which I think is key also to create a bit of a digital identity, digital citizenship in the relationship with the public administration, also as a forcing device to have, rather than a siloed architecture for public services, into more kind of a government bus that then has the opportunity through standard of developing a cohesive architecture. And then the third one that we're focusing on is on e-invoices, which I think it's important to have, as a way of cost management, a real cost management on behalf of the state, because at the moment it's all very analog and very tentative, as a tool of transparency, as also as a push for innovation of company processes. What I find interesting is, and I'm encouraged to see the traction of the many people who know an awful lot about these things in public administration. Common wisdom is bureaucrats, a bunch of plonkers in Italy. They're not exactly the same equation. I mean, there's a lot of people who know a lot about what they're doing. They have the spirit and the enthusiasm of building something. Is an issue of creating the environment for them to deliver. And I think that, again, the challenge that I see is, if we are really in the position, and I was referring to before to the Digital Register of Enterprises, is one of the very, very good examples of what the Italian public administration can deliver in terms of systems. The interesting bit is that if you move towards that direction, all of a sudden there is a market that opens up for new technology and new startups. Because in the world we heard a lot about testing, the culture of testing. Innovation should be part of the public administration. The open standard, the standardized processes are, in my view, a necessary platform to consider a much wider field of suppliers to the public administration. And I think that's the next chapter in driving innovation, by steering public demand into a field of innovation as part of certain level of standards. In one particular area, if you think about web services or open data, the ability of having a standardized set of semantics and ontologies for the public data, public administration data, can create a very concrete, real market of a kind of raw material for the applications and services that you guys then can develop and participate. It's a long journey. I don't think we're going to see any kind of results short term. But again, the push for standard is, in my view, the precondition to open the market in this direction. Let me close, and so I'll stick into my 10 minutes, with a couple of thoughts on Italian universities and talents. This is not strictly related to my specific role at the moment with the government, but more with the experience that I've had through the years in dealing with Italian universities and in dealing with people and companies who've been in touch with the product of Italian universities, the talents that Italy produces. They are absolutely world-class, top-notch, and we are absolutely pathetic the way we promote our ability. And we have this ironic situation where public funds go into the development of real talents that then jump on a flight and go away. I think there is an opportunity for you guys, and I've referred particularly to investors, to do somehow the alternative journey. It's not a mystery. I run a company that is called Avius, been taken over by GE about 3 months ago. We're now going through the analysis of the cost of our own ladies and gentlemen engineers, the type of cost-quality ratio is unbeatable on a world scale. And if I look at the type of excellences that some of our youngsters are in position to produce, and again I refer to aerospace, if you go 40 miles from here, they have engineered, designed, produced the most advanced satellite launchers on Earth, here, from the University of Rome. There's something that, it wouldn't be bad if you leave Rome with this thought. There is relatively cheap, high-quality talent that could be intercepted by your investments if you, as a differentiating element. I was CEO of a company whose founder used to say, the good thing is to move job where people are rather than move people to where the jobs. That may be a thought that I leave with you in thinking of investments in Italy. This is it. This is, apart from the very high level of noise that you hear in the press about volatility, instability, it's a great land for putting money at work. There is a genuine commitment of the administration, well beyond any current government, of taking care of employment, the tune that employment comes not just for big steel mills, but from innovation and investments is going through. Long journey ahead, but I think we're in a good platform, so I conclude, put a lot of whatever currency you pick at work in here. I'm sure the returns will not disappoint you. Thank you very much.
Well done. Thanks, Francesco. Guys, we have Francesco Caio here. How about shoot some question to Francesco? It doesn't happen every day, so thank you very much. Just your name and ciao.
My name is Leo Sorge. I'm a journalist, and I'm following Digital Agenda since its beginning. And now I've seen that you are finally addressing only a subset of the original 51 and more deadlines that were included in the decree, in the original decree. Do you have any problems? Do you see any problems in synchronizing the needs for the subset execution and the original ones? I mean, sometimes you have to deal with part of the decree that have to be worked out before then the subsets. So this kind of complexity, how are you dealing with it?
Ignoring it. I'm talking to foreign investments today, so make sure you understand that there are indeed a lot of constraints from a legal standpoint, but you need to have people who are knowledgeable in dealing with that matter. And when you deal with people who are knowledgeable on that matter, they're in a position to, in a way, create a triage to kind of segment the real sequencing from the perceived sequences. And one issue that we're dealing with at the moment is that there has always been a rush into writing laws and bills and decrees without thinking before what the decree was for. And one thing I'm trying to do with the help of the team of the Prime Minister is revert exactly that. Is to have the feasibility study, is to have an understanding of where we want to do, and then turn into the body of law and say, what do we need to get there? So there are issues, there are complexities, but I think what the overarching message that I would like to leave is that the complexity is enormously amplified where you don't know where you want to go. Because if you have a view, if you have an architecture, if you have a set of key manageable priorities, it is a great help in also creating some order and sequencing in how you deal with decrees. It's painful, so I'm not here to bullshit anybody. There is a bureaucratic side that needs still to be addressed, but it's not the barrier. The barrier is lack of vision. We now to try to take care of that.
Francesco, we have another question. By the way, a huge round of applause. When you'll be on stage? Today or tomorrow? Tomorrow. All right.
Hello. Hi. I'm Nanad from Dean Capital. So we're an investor in Europe and also in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
So what are the three things you think Italy needs to do to get on the map of the startup scene? Because today you have London, you have Berlin, you have Stockholm. a little bit Paris. But today, we don't know where, there has to be one city, because I think, you know, clusters are very important for a startup ecosystem. So which is the city? And then what are the 3 things that have to happen to make this start taking off? Because, you know, as an investor, we're all going around the circuit. We all go to Berlin, we all go to London, we go to Stockholm, we go to Helsinki. Yeah. No one is coming to Italy. Well, they are, but not as much, like, you know, I mean, I'm talking about every week. In Berlin, the VCs are in Berlin every week. I run into my competition in every hotel all the time. And as you say, you know, some of the smartest minds in the world have come out of Italy. How do you channel that into startups?
Look, I think, to be fair, this is the key crucial question. I wish I had the answer, and we can go out and do the 3 things. I think these are processes that are somehow, I mean, if you followed, as I'm sure you have, the creation of Tech City in London is a bit of a mysterious project where all of a sudden things gel. And, you know, you get critical mass and you get a kind of virtual circle of the proximity and all the rest of that. There is, I don't know whether you've read a recent book by Enrico Moretti, The Geography of Innovation, where he's comparing different clusters and what is separating the good ones for the bad ones. I'm summarizing it, I'm not doing justice to the work, but in summary, is a very strong connection between the enterprise and the university. I mean, it's not exactly that, but I mean, now, interesting, if you take, there is a report that you can read, it's called netval.org in Italy, that lists all the spin-offs and companies from universities. Now, not all of them are particularly good, but there are, you know, 1,100. So if you can, it's interesting to compare the numbers of the startups of the business register and the spin-offs of university. They're almost the same, but nobody's talking about the latter, including myself. I didn't mention that before, so therefore, thank you for the question. I think there is a huge, huge task in communication. We are absolutely poor in making sure that the investors know what we talk about ourselves. We don't talk to you. And so I'm not going into point number 2 and number 3. I think I would stick to number 1. Just how we can make sure that there is a fact-based view of what the academy and the academic world can do in this country. Look, I'm taking the flight now to Politecnico di Milano this afternoon. I'm on the board of Politecnico, so I'm very parochial and very biased. But it's a recent QS research international level. Number 9 on the global scales for some engineering stuff. It drives me up the fucking wall. You know, everybody should know this. Everybody should know. Helsinki is the past. You want to invest in the past? Go to Helsinki. You want to invest in the future? Go to Milan.
All right.
Thank you. Paolo Lombardi, I'm head of TechPeaks, the public accelerator in Trento.
From Helsinki, I understand.
No.
Good.
Trento, but it's up in the Alps. It's pretty cold as well. So one of the most painful part for us was to bring in to Italy entrepreneurs from all over the world.
Yes.
We fought against the frontiers that are not only made by the visas, but also by all the bureaucracy that, notwithstanding the reforms we are pushing, is still too high.
Yes.
What can be done and what is on the agenda for this? To open frontiers for this country. Thanks.
You know, a lot, that's the answer. But again, I think there's an issue of engagement. I would like to focus on this one. Clarity of proposals can do an awful lot. Believe me, I'm now seeing the machine from the inside. The machine from the inside looks like a machine that has a lot of goodwill in doing things that are very good for you. They're not waking up in the morning and saying, how can we screw up startups? So the issue is clarity of proposals. And the point you raise is not, I kind of dare to add, just an Italian point. You know, you follow the debate in what's happening and has happened in the US with the ability to, for instance, deal with some level of bureaucracy and some level of kind of attitude towards citizenship and participation to the growth and the rest of that. You have a point. Scream loudly and put forward ideas. But it would be naive for me. It would be naive for me to leave this room without acknowledging this, and acknowledging that this is something that has to be put in the equation. And I mean, we're not in the business of cheating here.
Right.
But what I'm saying, I would like to emphasize that there is a genuine will, but not because the government all of a sudden is in the charity business, because there is no money left. So there must be some way of dealing with things that do not cost money, but actually facilitate the influx of new capital.
Good. Francesco, last question, promise,
Yes.
and then I'll let you go.
Hi, Antonio. I'm a startupper from Abruzzo.
Good.
Yeah.
What do you do?
It's a social network. So, yeah, for those who don't know Abruzzo, it's not Silicon Valley for sure. Good wine, good food.
But you never know. I've been a center.
Well, almost. Barrea is quite
Yeah,
like
great.
San Francisco. Yeah.
So,
Texas Instruments made a lot of memories out there.
Okay. Anyway, so part of our dream, of course, it's being the apple of Abruzzo. Okay, I'm joking. Anyway, not that much. I was, first of all, delighted to read the Restart Italia report. That is something that was done last year and then become the Creator 2.0.
Yeah.
So for us, it was kind of a dream to read those words. But then we started going around in the Chamber of Commerce, banks. Also now there is the access to Fondo di Garanzia, which is like banks granting for startups. But let's say I started, so I said, okay, I've got this startup. Sorry, in Italian. Can you say in Italian startup? Because let's say we see that in banks, Chamber of Commerce, really they even don't know what is a startup.
Checked.
So is there some program to train people at least on what
Look,
is a startup?
I think you have to take...
On language translation, I think.
Yes. Let me take somehow of a brutally commercial attitude here. Try, and I understand it's a bit of effort, to look at it as an opportunity. And again, talking to investors. There are so many good ideas that are daily disregarded in Italy because banks and so-called funds of whatever nature don't understand the difference between a digital service and a coffee machine. That is the nature of the opportunity here. It is the nature of the opportunity. If you're in a position to intercept these ideas, that's what I'm saying, you might find yourself in a position where there's a little competition to fund. I understand that the risk-return profile needs to be adjusted if you're in this situation. And, you know, we are far from the optimal situation. But think along these lines. If you establish good links with universities, with good universities, and there are at least 5 or 6 centers of universities that are really, really good, you have the opportunity of putting seed money in projects that perhaps could be bid up in other countries. I know it's not the ideal answer. I know I would like to answer that you have and can rely on a knowledgeable community of networked intelligence. It's not the case in Italy. But there are peaks of very good, high-quality talents that could be funded in a way. Just to conclude, and I'll shut up and go to Milan. On the Chambers of Commerce, have a look to Union Camere and Registro delle Imprese, because they're doing an awful lot, and it's one of the few European countries that has completeness of visibility centrally in the digital world for company profile. You could do a lot of the opening and dealing with companies online. You could pay online. You could do things online. I'm encouraging them to be more visible, back to the communication point, because it's an unknown. It was unknown to me until a few months ago when I started this kind of task. But that's the general spirit that I would invite you to take. The gold is somewhere in the ground. Look for it. There aren't many looking, but when you find it, it's real. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Francesco Caio. Thank you.
I did it.